We are. So welcome Building in Public. We've got Alex from Deel today. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me. I have a lot to learn when it comes to building in public, so I'm ready to learn what you're going to teach me today.
Well, we're not going to teach you anything. We're just going to do it with you. And we're going to learn how you build.
You guys are also you're also good at building in public. There's so many great companies that I've taken, like generally have been great at building in public. I'm excited to see this and chat about it in general.
Yeah. Do you have any in particular that come to mind as like some of your favorite examples?
Yeah, it was this guy's company's name, Copy.ai, right? He's all over Twitter. I've never seen someone execute on like building in public like this guy has.
Tell me the name. Copy?
Copy.ai.
Yeah, what's his name? He's really sweet. Paul? Is it Paul? Paul Yakubian? Yeah, Copy.ai.
Oh yeah, here's his Twitter. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does he do? Is he talking about like what they're building or how people are using it, or
he tweets about his MR and every single thing on
okay.
weekly basis. I've never seen someone like.
Right.
Wow.
It's interesting because we were talking about this. I think yesterday. Have you followed the Buffer story at all?
I followed Buffer in general as a company, but I didn't see a news story come up.
No, not new, but just like over, I think what it's been 6-8 years, they do these like very public, like here's our MRR and here's our kind of cost structure, and I think they have all of their like employment levels very transparent.
I don't know if I would work like this. I'm not 100% sure it fit my style in general. What about you? Would you do that?
You know, it does not feel quite in the ethos of what we're building. We don't really have any monthly revenue, so yes, we can tell everybody zero, and it's okay. But I think the ethos of what we're building, we want to help tell stories, but I think we want to figure out stories that are like natural for us to tell, not that feel like too much of a stretch. I think some of the things that I find sort of inspiring in this kind of building in public world are. Have you seen what Sahil Lavinia is doing with his open board meetings?
Yes, I don't think my board would be cool with that, but yeah.
Right, but I think that's kind of like he has a different situation where he's not so much kind of like venture backed anymore, like modestly venture backed, but doesn't really have a formal board anymore. So he considers the board like the constituents of people who are gathered around, participating. But I think he's like also fairly radically transparent, and I think that works in that environment. So it's really, I think it shouldn't feel like too much of a stretch. It shouldn't be like, oh, we're going to like really get so far out of our comfort zone. Just something like, oh, we can try this out. It feels normal. It feels natural. It's fun. So that's kind of how we think about it.
I like what Amjad does too. I feel like that's the more interesting part of building in public. Like, I don't really want to read stats on someone's company month by month, but I would rather know like what is the most challenging conversation they had in the last week, and like what's their decision-making process. Can they show me their whiteboard? Like more of the process type stuff I feel like is way more interesting to people, and also will like help people in the ecosystem too. Like what fun projects are people doing using your stuff that you're building out there in the world?
Yeah, Riblit's a crazy company. Riblit's a game-changing company, so he's definitely gonna have a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So Ali, in terms of your work, like let's kind of wind it back a little bit. Like, how did I know we have Deel today, and we're a happy customer, and we'll do more and more over the years. But I'm curious to sort of rewind the clock. Kind of what led to deciding, you deciding that Deel should exist, or was it a personal frustration or market opportunity, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, I'm originally from France. I grew up in Paris, moved to Israel, to the US, to the UK, back to Israel, back to the US. So I went to an international school. I've had the opportunity to see that just generally talent is everywhere. And that, whenever I build companies, whenever I went back to building companies, I always hired people distributed. For another reason, it's just I didn't have the money to pay for SF-based developers or Israeli-based developers. So, it's very much in my core, right? I've met amazing people in Albania, in the UK, in France, working as engineers, and maybe paid a tenth of the salary than my friend that's in San Francisco. There, I love them a lot, but are very entitled and change job every year for a 20% increase in salary. So For me, the idea that you can leverage the fact that generally there's so much talent out there and there's more and more they're learning every day, and you just need the tools to their felt really right. I mean, and my co-founder has a similar story, but had different types of frustration. She also came from China to the US and then went back to China to build her first company, and we were both really aligned, and it made a lot of sense. It's a product. I think product founder fit is really important. I think product like Deel is literally running through my vein. It's exactly what I think I was meant to build in general. So I feel very strongly.
Yeah. Right. How did you meet your co-founder? How did you decide to work together?
We met back at school. So we were at MIT together. And at the time, we weren't excited about building anything together. She actually went to build her first company. And I went to the UK to start my PhD. And I thought it was super boring. She built a pretty successful company, actually. And we were both in a pretty good place, and we were just chilling. It's like, what do we want to build next? Oh, that makes a lot of sense. We want to be in fintech, and we see a gap in the market there. So, nothing crazy. The usual we met at school type of story.
Yeah.
What were the kinds of things that you like before you had Deel? You were running these companies, products, teams that were distributed and trying to pay. Were you using like some patchwork? Some combination of some of the consumer services for money transfer, or
so I'm pretty lucky because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my dad built a public company across 30 plus countries. So when I started my first company, I was doing manual bank transfers from, at the time, an Israeli bank account. And trust me, you don't want to mess with an Israeli bank. It's like the most horrible thing in the world, into like the Ukraine and India. And it was a terrible, just the payment itself was not great. And I remember him looking at me and saying, you're doing everything wrong end to end. Like, you have no idea what you're doing. You're just sending money to some random person with no idea either what compliance is, what's a proper contract, how to do it right, how does that work from that country to the other one from an entity perspective and a labor law perspective. And I remember being like, oh, whatever, I just want to get that guy paid for now, and it doesn't really matter. And eventually, across different processes, I realized how messed up like the idea of that is, right? I come from a country where, I mean, you want to challenge labor laws, come to France, right? Welcome to the land of the worst or the best. It depends on how you look at it. Employment laws and classification laws of workers, and it hit really at home when it made sense for me to build that because on Deel we help you hire anyone regardless if they are a contractor, an employee, regardless of both of the models. You should look at the different models available to be a contractor in France. Right? There's so many setups. There's so many ways that affect your actual contracts and the relationships, and it's kind of like mind blowing that at the time, at least, I was like, oh, I'll just send money to that guy and be okay. And then I realized that even really, really big companies do the same thing, which is crazy.
Right. And so were you building, when you first started building this, were you building it already as a customer? Like when you were trying to use this to pay people kind of on initial team?
Always our first customer. I mean, even today, right? Like probably 150 now, 150 people, 30 different countries. Wow. I don't think I could sell something I don't use. I mean, it's like the very basics of sales for me at least. And I feel like there's something special about using your own product on a day-to-day basis, right? And even for my team, right? Like you see something, you want to fix it, you fix it. You fix it for everybody else. That feels very special.
Right. And you mentioned kind of there's the small team company, like, what you are from day one, and now you're 150 people. It's like much bigger team. And then there's probably the very large enterprise that has all kinds of requirements, but they're also kind of doing things in a broken way. And so do you feel like over time you end up shifting kind of or splitting to focus product in different ways, or how do you think about sort of those different flavors?
So luckily for me, we're in a market where most of the companies, regardless of their stage, don't really have a good solution. So we're coming into either like small startups that are still not there, or big companies that are incumbents and are just painful to work with. In our space, right? Things that move fast, where you want to give really like a great experience, you want to be able to hire those people really fast. Like there's a huge gap in the market. So thankfully for us, whether you're on the SMB side or on the enterprise side, we still have, like with the current product, we're still able to like catch and serve most of them. We definitely have been shipping a couple features that are maybe more for bigger organization, like added reporting, for example, or maybe create like custom fields for each one of the contracts. Like those are like I had never done this. I have never used those features myself. having never built an enterprise, but they definitely need it. So I think overall, you gradually upgrade yourself as a company and start serving, SMB, mid-market, and start going a bit more to the enterprise side. Whether enterprise is the right market for us, I don't know, but there's definitely some strong interest there as well. So it's worth exploring.
Right. It seems like it has this nice, almost, I think people reference the Stripe-like quality of being able to like start with a small, underserved market. And then as those customers grow, your business naturally grows. Then you also get to kind of grow up with them. Does that feel like that's going to be, is that 80% of the business today? Is that how you get big, or do you end up getting big, you think, by really getting deeper on kind of existing large enterprise needs?
Yeah, so no, SMB mid-market has been the main focus for us right now. I think without giving any numbers, by 6 months, we have significant expansion within organizations. And even at the SMB mid-market size, just when you get those fast-growing startups, so the companies that are just genuinely growing over time, then if you've done a good job, you do a good job, they stick and they hire more. I definitely have some enterprise deals that are tiny, and I just have them for the logo, right? They just needed a solution for X for Z, and it worked really well for us because it was very quick onboarding. I think the Stripe approach here is the same that we're taking. I don't see why we wouldn't. Obviously, as you grow, you need to put different mechanisms. It's not super scalable there's definitely some trade-off. Like most of the people I talk to, they don't truly understand what we do until you dive really deep into it.
Uh-oh. I hope you don't have to go run away.
No, that's not the companion. So, you don't have to, like most of you have to evangelize quite a bit. And, at scale, you can't really have tons of it. I mean, you can have SMBAs, but how many do you want selling to 0 to like 3 people on the platform, right? So there's definitely some mechanisms that we'll need to scale with the company as we get there. But I think we have a lot of things to figure out. I think where we lucked out is regardless of the stage of companies, there is a need for the product. So it's just a matter of execution right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like, do you find a lot of times, an existing, maybe there's like an auditor or an accounting system or, something, maybe a finance team, are they generally receptive, or they're asking for this, or there's sort of like an interplay within an organization around how, like who owns it, who makes the decisions, how do you sort of talk to people?
Yeah, it depends, right? Because global hiring is a subject that touches so many people within an organization. When the more you grow into larger organization, you end up having finance for sure, legal, right? Because you're either employing people on behalf of others, or you're helping them mitigate their misclassification risk. You definitely have people in HR as well that are involved to make sure that the team is having a great time and they're getting onboarded the right way. So what I found is every company have their own power dynamics as per who really runs the company. Oftentimes legal is your white knight in shining armor that recognizes the risk and really needs a solution. Finance recognizes the workflows and the automation processes. Sometimes finance has to shift away from considering some of their international teammates as account payables and actually giving them a proper experience. That's also something that has been pretty fun to educate them on. So I think it's always a trifecta, and a matter of within the organization who actually gets to call the shot, and I think that actually really differs from one company to another.
Yeah. How do you think your own process, like what have been kind of the most challenging parts of evolving your own like decision-making process or day-to-day routine as the company has scaled just like so rapidly in the last few months?
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think I've been really lucky. We hire really great leaders, and I think hiring the right leaders for the right stage of the company helps take a lot of weight off your shoulders, because when you're growing the organization the way we have, every single pieces of the organization grows really fast, right? So you're scaling sales, but if you're scaling sales, you need to scale success. If you're scaling success, you need to scale support. And then if you're scaling support and success, you need to scale product, and therefore you need to scale engineering, right? And I think every single part of the organization becomes a bottleneck, and it's all about like solving that by just bringing either very, very strong ICs or the right leaders to build out this organization. So if you look at our sales organization right now, it's crazy. Like the people we have in place, I mean, it's like I wish I had hired them earlier. They're running the organization like I wish I could run it. And it's just about having the right people. Honestly, like those people just take your company to the next level. And I've talked to enough people by now to know that some people are the right people for that stage, and then you evolve into a different stage. And when you get there, a new set of people, a new set of leadership might be the right ones as well. So it's it's definitely I'm learning in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've actually heard that from a couple of people. Like, I wish I'd hired these people earlier, or people told me that this was coming up, but I didn't really. You don't really like register it until it happens.
A pragmatic example: we hired a sales enablement person. She is amazing, and she's helped us ramp up every single sales hire like I've never seen before. Like, I look at what she creates, and I'm like, holy shit! Why weren't you here 3 months ago? And it's like there's a couple. It's like finance, right? Like, I wish I had hired someone on the finance side earlier. It's easy to say now because we have some form of product market fit, so we know the company is really going to grow. But a lot of the processes that they put in place, like, I wish I had the cognizance of having those put in place right, like before. And it's great.
I wonder. I wonder if you were to coach yourself back earlier. Let's say it's just the two of you sitting, or there's a handful, maybe dozen people sitting. And I find this kind of constant tension in early stage companies between, okay, we can try to hire an individual contributor who's going to hit the ground running and they're going to just be able to do the function, or we're going to bring in a senior leader who is going to set the kind of strategy, set the formation, the foundation, and then that person can hire in kind of ICs. Do you feel like you've gone one way or the other? Do you feel like you'd advise yourself?
It's hard to say because when you're in the early stage of the company, and I think for the first year of the business, right, like it took us a while to build a lot of the foundations of what we were doing. And now I look back and we'll look back and like, okay, it's obvious it's going to work. But a year and a half ago, the growth we had, I definitely did not plan for it, right? We knew that we were going to grow. We were pretty bullish on our product, but it's hard to make hires, at least as a first time, like proper VC-backed founder, it's hard to make hires that assume you're going to be successful, right? You want to have something that really works before you make those hires and before you overcommit into hiring. So it's easy for me to look back and say, hey, you know what? Like, given how fast we're growing, it would have been better for the foundation of someone before. But at the same time, who knows if it would have actually turned out that way at that time. So that's one. And, what I've learned is senior ICs are always valuable if they bring in, like, if they're good. And they don't have to turn into management. Like, you can just hire a lot of very strong senior ICs for the right roles, and then hire management when it makes sense. Like, I remember when me and Shuo came out of YC, we had met that amazing VP sales. It had no business being at that company at this stage. We completely wasted our time. So like a VP sales when we were 3 people, like, it made no sense. But we were thinking, we're going to scale like crazy. They're going to do so much. It just didn't make sense for the company. So it's it's a balance.
Yeah, take us back to that. 3 people size, and you're kind of thinking, you're like, it's like, let's go for this VP sales. Okay, that's not going to work. It's not obvious enough traction. And like, what are you worried about at that stage of the company? Like, what are you thinking? Oh, like, I think this might work, but then I have these concerns. What did that feel like?
Yeah, at that stage of the company, I think you're thinking of very different problems. Right? You're thinking more about, and at the very beginning, when you've got no trust, when you've got a broken product, and you're trying to get people to pass money through your company, right? Like, you're more thinking like, am I in the right directions? Am I building something that's very useful? I think we were very lucky where we had like strong conviction on the product. We knew it was something that was going to work, and it was just a matter of time. I think it's not everybody has that, and it makes it easier when you do, because you keep on going and you're okay with building a company for like 6 to 8 to 9 months with nice increase in revenue, and amazing, you're growing 100% a month. Cool, you went from $1,000 to $2,000, right? 100%. Right? So like the way I look at it is, I think it's when we were just, you got to be very honest with yourself. Like, what you're building, does anybody care? I think you were one of the first people to use it, so very thankful for that. And I think you bared through a lot of shit at the beginning, so I really appreciate it. But the thing is, the fact that you stick through, like, I don't know what's the right word for it, but stick through like some of those tells me, hey, there's something, right? Like, it's only in the beginning, it can only get better, but there's definitely something. So it's worth drilling into. Not worth hiring a VP sales, not yet, but worth drilling into.
Yeah.
So I figured we must have.
I was wondering, what were some of the toughest or like lowest moments when you doubted the most?
Toughest or lowest moments. I mean, we got a decent amount of no's when we started fundraising. Always fun.
Yeah.
Was there anybody who articulated a specific type of skepticism?
So, during YC, we pivoted into the final version of Deel, like a week before demo day. I think we were like one of the companies that have pivoted the closest to demo day that YC's ever seen. So, we definitely had some doubts. Like, I remember sitting in our office hours with the very first version of the product, and I was like, oh, we grew really nicely. And like, no one really cared, right? Like, it was not significant growth. It was like nice growth, like 20, 30%. And we were pretty proud. And I was like, no, something must be wrong there. So we just started pivoting. I remember there's some point where we pivoted into debt collection, and somehow we were helping freelancers collect their debt back. And somehow we convinced a customer that had dodged a $5,000 invoice of a freelancer to pay him back. And we're like, product market fit. We know what we've got. We've got something that and then we went back to our original idea before, but with a couple of twists. So I think those were kind of like interesting times. They weren't low times because we were not like, I think Shu and I were very optimistic in general. I don't know if you've ever met her, but me and her are very aligned, and we're very, very optimistic, and we always kind of like keep going. We don't really have those down moments, or at least PTSD. I don't remember them. But we usually push forward, and we lie to ourselves a lot on that front.
So the Deel product we have today was the original, but then this like debt collection thing was like a little bit of a divergent.
Yeah, there were a few in between.
Yeah, what Wiggles? Tell us about those.
The Wiggles.
So no, Deel, it's funny. Deel started very early on. So it was always about like paying people around the world, making it easier. And we brought on the layer of compliance and all of that later on. But at the very beginning, we thought crypto was the answer, actually. So we built a system with crypto, and we were pretty bullish on crypto, me and Shuo. Like, we built one of the first NFT games out there as well. So we love the market. And we're like, okay, this is the way to enable people to hire other people and not have trust in the like no need for trust in the middle of the relationships and all those things. Mm-hmm. And eventually, what happened? We pivoted in the middle, and then we went back to it at some point. And what happened is one of our batchmates at the time, he loves that story. He's also on our like landing page, about page. So at the time on Deel, the idea is that we were escrowing the money, and then at the moment of completion of the work, the money would like kind of like go to the contractor you're hiring, wherever they are, your teammate, wherever they are, automatically without a need for you from a trust aspect. And if you drill me a little bit on that, it was actually a pretty silly idea, but whatever. What happens is one of my teammates just had created a couple like milestone escrows and had put like $10,000 like in it. I was like, why the fuck would you put $10,000 in an escrow for someone you're paying? Like, what happened? And I just drilled onto him, and like the idea of tying contracts and compensation in one place was something that was not there. Like, it's just not anywhere. Like, the way at the time for us it was smart contracts, right? Like the way smart contracts work in the actual word, they were never tied together, right? You have contracts, and then you have compensation that's completely unrelated to the trust aspect of the relationship. And the idea that he could spin up a contract with someone as an independent, a basic at the time, right? Nothing compliant, right? Like a basic contract agreement, and then start like building that relationship and paying them felt natural and made sense. And we just built on top of that, and we just kept on building and building and building.
Yeah.
Right. You were mentioning kind of at this very early stage how I think you mentioned that we were one of your first customers, and I suspected that was probably the case because you were always available on Intercom.
I was wow, by the way, I love being on Intercom. It's my favorite thing.
All hours of every day. So I wonder, I thought that was maybe just a gift that I had from being early, but I wonder how much time you're spending on Intercom these days and how kind of that has evolved over time.
Yeah, I've actually spent a little less time over the last month and a half, because we've grown the support team by so much, and I feel like it is something like I go every now and then to help, but if I feel like this is something that for the sake of scale, I want them to be able to shadow us and actually scale really heavily and provide the same level of customer support. But no, I was definitely the top performer up until February or January. I really enjoy it, right? This is where I learn the most. When I'm talking to my customers from a product perspective, from like, it just feels really right. I think I have over 500 customers between like Twitter DMs and WhatsApp that like I'm your direct line of customer support in any cases. And that actually builds like one strong relationship. Second, people see we truly care. We're building this because we care. And the last part is the best customer feedback in the world straight in your WhatsApp on a daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's striking as a customer of Deel when we would run into a problem, or I remember we had some conversion. I think you converted the backend system or the data structure. You did like some big conversion one time, and like it kind of like, changed a lot. And I wasn't sure exactly, was I using it right or wrong, or did something change? And just having like you on the other end of that intercom to just work through the problem just gave me so much confidence that, okay, why would we ever leave? Of course, this is going to be our
solution. I'm here, David. Whenever you need, I'm still here.
So it's, I think that that almost like a obsessive focus on kind of customer service is almost like the best way to be obsessively product focused in the early days, especially. So that's an interesting kind of. I think you've done that well, and I think the idea of starting this company and focusing so much on the customer service and kind of the product. I think a lot of people misunderstand that, and so one thing that I would suggest is I think you probably will always have this in your DNA, but I think the kind of like obsessive focus on who else is getting started, who needs this kind of help, I think will just, continue to pay dividends forever. Like if if you're an angel investor and you ever invest in like companies and then you ever bump into Patrick Collison, the first thing he asks you is, okay, what are the most recent companies you've invested in? Are they using Stripe? Are they using Stripe? And he just goes and he looks through to make sure that all of these new companies that have no revenue are using Stripe. It's just that obsessive focus. And so I think that already comes through, from early days of Deel. So I commend you on that. Yeah.
I'm no Patrick Collison, but I would love for every single one of your portfolio company to be on Deel. So if you want to make that happen, I bet that a couple are.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I've been telling people, yeah. So I wonder actually the, kind of that early days, 3 people, you're on intercom all the time, and now you're a 150 person company. I don't think you're talking necessarily revenue, but obviously like a lot is going right. So along that kind of the steps, what actually worked for kind of, what were there step change moments where you're like, oh, aha, we had a big break because, I don't know, maybe you tweeted something, or maybe you wrote a blog post, or maybe some big company heard about you through somebody else, or what were sort of were there step change, kind of spurts along the growth path?
I think the step change we had were more related to the readiness of the tool in general. It's like every month we knew we were growing, and we were growing at the right rate, and the product was getting better. And increasingly, we saw more and more traction when the product just got tremendously better. And as it got better, word of mouth got better. And when word of mouth got, revenue got higher, Andreessen invested. And like we definitely had like those even within the organization. And that's, the moment right before they had invested is when we brought on our head of sales in the US, our head of sales in the EMEA to start building out the team. So like it was very, like we definitely had a couple of inflection points. I think they were just tied to product readiness in general.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say product readiness. That's, of course, fundraising helps, right? Like getting Andreessen to back you definitely brings some light and shines on the company, which is really great. But I think the timing at which they backed us was exactly at the moment where we were going to go on an inflection point. Like they exactly found that moment where, regardless of the run, we were exactly at that first inflection point of the company from a sales perspective and growth perspective.
Right.
Yeah. What feels top of mind today? Like what are you actively thinking about a lot or discussing a lot with people on your team?
Hiring right now mainly. So generally, what are the different roles that we need? How do you know the hiring plans? How are we doing there? It's like, it sounds very boring, but I spend a decent amount of time doing that now. It's a big part of my job, and scaling the organization is definitely tougher than people think, and doing that in a way that you maintain culture at a very fast pace at the same time is non-trivial. So we're always working on that, and we're always working on the different hiring principles that we have, like how do we make sure that the key values of the company are gone through, and how do we make sure that, I mean, I've not actually not let go completely. I'm not sure if I will ever let go. I'm still the last interviewer for everyone at the company. So I don't know if I'll let that one go, but it is actually a lot of fun to be part of that. It feels very much like the intercom, right? Where you just get to learn of that. So yeah, a lot of the people side, strategy wise at Deel, we got a couple of really big things that are coming through, but like from a current product perspective, we're in pure execution, like opening it to countries, building the organization for growth, like increasing sales, like playing on the different, optimizing on the different like parameters of the sales process, like building the product to have the right features for enterprise, and all of those things feel a lot less like struggles, more like pure execution and just having the right people in place. It's just the next steps and just making sure the organization doesn't, keeps on shining rather than having some of like bad practices that we may not see or anything that comes through the organization. I use the organization too much.
That's really interesting. I'm also curious on the hiring front, how you're being involved with interviews from like day zero till now, how your approach has changed in terms of things that you particularly look more or less for, like what kinds of questions bring those out, like how have you evolved as someone on the other side of the process?
Yeah, I mean, we always try to give the best experience possible. I think this is actually something we need to work on quite a bit, right? Like employer brand and funnel. I think we do a good job, but I don't think I spend enough time polishing that. But anyway, I mean, I've definitely evolved quite a bit myself. I think I'm able to understand a bit quicker if someone's going to do well in the company or not. Just like, do they align with the values of the people? I can probably do that within the first 5 minutes of a call. I've found, I've definitely polished the type of questions, or at least the type of skills I'm looking for based on the type of roles that I'm looking at. The thing is actually easy. When someone comes to me, they have the skills. If they get to me on the path, they have the skills. It's just a matter of like, do they really, do they fit the company's value and the company like key principles? And if they do, it's really easy for me to spot that. So it becomes a lot more of a fun conversation and to get to know each other eventually.
What are those like signals that they do? And what is really important when you're in those first few minutes?
If you do that, then they're going to be motivated.
That's the secret. We're going to make a highlight of this.
What's important is, at Deel, the main thing we look at is generally being very biased to action. So don't wait for your customers. Don't be reactive. Be proactive in general. Second is we hire really good people at heart. I'll take a good person over. Skills wise, I don't mind. I don't care. I prefer someone with 20% less skills. That's a lot better and much better person, let's say. Caring is super important. If you care about your teammates, about your customers, about the product, about everything, you'll build a better organization, I think. And the last one is very entrepreneurial. It's not only being biased to action, but also like initiating different things is quite important. And if you have all of that and you're a good person, you're going to have fun. We'll help.
So it sounds like those are, interestingly, I'd say, agnostic of the topic of what you're working on. And so I wonder if you had, a person who fits all those characteristics, but they don't yet know about Deel, or they don't yet know what to expect or why Deel. What do you think is the way, like, what is the thing that really grabs people's excitement around the mission of what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think most of the people that usually, get to me have a good understanding of the company and what we're doing, have some level of excitement, and, depending on the level of the hire, regardless of the level, actually, sometimes I'll have to do a lot of selling as well. But I think generally the idea of Deel is pretty easy to get excited by, right? The idea that we want to enable companies to hire anyone, anywhere, give them a really great experience, being able to break those borders and not being tied up to the 30 miles radius around you. And the flip side, right? You want to empower hundreds of millions of people to work for the best companies in the world, regardless of where they're from. Like that, maybe I'm a little biased, but like it sounds like a mission most people can align behind, right? Especially some of the most talented people, right? A lot of the immigrants you'll find that can feel the experience of their parents that have immigrated to the US before and that had to immigrate because that was the only way for them to get a good job and they couldn't have stayed in their home countries. And like there's so many alignments with some of the smartest people in the world that the selling is easier than I think some much more complex products.
Mm-hmm. Given sort of the problem you're solving and kind of the nature of work, I wonder how you think about sort of time zones, global, worldwide, async, sync? Like, do you have sort of a kind of a culture playbook or kind of a habit playbook for how maybe a distributed company, works in the Deel case and then more generally?
Yeah, I mean, on my side, so when we started the company, we were time zone wise, we were kind of split. So engineering product was in Europe, and then the rest was in the United States for the south side most of the time. So it was easier with that split because we're a sync company, we're not an async company. To be completely honest, we move really fast and we move around the clock, and it just works better for us. There's some work we do async, like there's projects and video creations or stuff like that. Obviously, the work is async; it's much easier. It works well. But I'm a pretty sync founder in general. I work. I like reactiveness and I like to get stuff done really fast. So I can't exactly play the async card as a remote founder that my peers love to play. I think sync works really well for us, and today we're 150 people, 30 different countries. I think we've built time zone to our advantage. It enables us to have support around the clock, and enables us to have a part of our engineering team that's working in the same time zone as our sales team. It enables us to have sales leaders across. One of the big things we're doing that we love doing at the moment is we have like in-country expansion. So we hire country managers to sell Deel to local companies like in Colombia, in Brazil, South Africa, Singapore. It just works really well for us. It's very deeply rooted to the company culture, and my playbook would be more around the experience you give to those people rather than restraining on their hiring.
Right. And I assume when you would build a team in Colombia, do you find somebody who already has a bunch of the kinds of relationships with maybe the prospective customers and sort of they become a country head?
Yeah, country head. Country head is it's one of the best strategy we've ever taken, actually. Yeah, we had, so for example, actually Colombia was our first market. And most of the people talk to me like, Alex, why the fuck would you go into Colombia as the first market you sell to? It makes no sense. After the US, of course, after the US and the EMEA where we were already, because European and American founders, right? So, opening in Colombia was very interesting for people. They're like, why are you going to Colombia to sell to Colombian companies? Like, what happened? The thing is, the way we look at it is our service is actually pretty malleable, and it's easy for us to sell to companies regardless of the countries they're from. There's only a couple of tweaks that need to be made from a compliance standpoint and things like that we're pretty on top of. And, I looked at the market. I look at a market where I have a lot of friends that are very, very successful. That are the initial customers of the company that have a good brand name. We found someone amazing that was able to leverage a lot of that and start building our own infrastructure. And here was the playbook, hire the right person, give her the right car, let her deploy the country. And today, not Colombia, but Latam is over 5% of our revenue. And that's actually pretty significant. And as we double down on that, we're very, very excited. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many companies at year 2 that start opening an office in Colombia to sell to Colombia.
Right. I thought you just vacationing in Cartagena or something.
Were you looking at a bunch of different countries in LATAM, or was it more you knew these people and knew this person you wanted to hire, so it sort of came together? How did you?
It felt like a market that we were going to dominate just by the sheer my personal network. I had enough personal network there that I felt like it was an easy market to get into, and it was a try. I just, we found the right person. I felt like I had the initial traction from the customers we had, and let's see if that works. And yeah, it worked. So and the model has worked with every single other country we launched into.
Yeah,
that's cool. I know we're a little short on time because I think we had 45 minutes blocked off. So I don't want to keep you over. I mean, we have the time, but I just want to be sensitive to what we had scheduled. But I did want to talk a little bit about product here because my understanding, our first touch point has been, Deel as a kind of an international payments mechanism. And I think I don't know if that's how you think about it or talk about it, but that's sort of
No. When we started, we were it was very gradual, right? The way we looked at it is global workforce. In your global workforce, you're going to have people working as independent contractor first. And then, we started with that. We're we're going to make those relationships amazing end to end.
Yep.
And in that relationship, you've got a lot of different gaps. The first one is you are a US company working with someone in India. Okay, so how do you have the right contracts in place? How do you have the right frameworks in place? How do you make sure you have the right structure locally so that when you work with them in that country, the relationship you're building doesn't put you in trouble from a classification, misclassification perspective, classification perspective, tax evasion perspective. So it was about making that relationship the best in class possible while giving a much, much better experience to the end user, the end customer. That is usually treated as an AP, right, as an account payable, although they're your teammate, right? So giving a much, much better experience to them, simplifying a lot of the workflow and building all the automation from contract signing to invoice generation, syncing into your QuickBooks, like, oh, that felt really right. Then, what happened is a lot of our customers came and say, oh, but Alex, I want to employ that person. Like, that person's a contractor, but that person I need to make an FTE. And, we looked at the model and we're like, sure. If this is what you want, then we'll build it. And it makes a lot of sense to me, right? Like if you think about Deel as the Swiss Army knife that's next to your ADP or your Gusto or your Rippling locally for all your non-local hires, then I want to be able to provide you with every single one of the type of hires that you want to make, right? And I want to build all the right framework and all the underlying infrastructure so that regardless of the model you go for, we'll make sure the compliance is in place and we'll make sure that you have, the ability to give them a really great experience. That's how we came to it.
So sort of like the contract, I guess in geography or in country contracts is like a big piece of it, right?
So that was for the contract model, and then for the employee model.
Model. So do you have like a local entity where you're like the employer of record?
We have over 35 local entities right now, and we have another 40 coming in the quarter. So
those are all Deel specific.
Deel entities. Yes, we'll have Deel Canada, Deel UK. Deel Spain, Deel Portugal, Deel Croatia, Deel Israel, the infrastructure that we have there gives us the ability to basically say, you want to hire someone by the end of the day in Canada, press 2 buttons, and that's it.
And so this is like effectively, is like the PEO market the right way to think about this? Is this like a new type of PEO?
No, it's well. So like the way you want to think about it is, so a PEO, the main difference with a PEO is a US term. The idea there is that you wanted to hire across states and you didn't want to register in every state. So professional PEO comes in and is registered there and enables you to do that really easily. In the same mindset, right? You want to do the exact same thing, but in Spain. Well, but 2 different countries, that doesn't exist. So here comes the EOR model. So the employer of record model is basically Deel Spain is located locally and is employing that person, giving them full benefits, social, statutory, everything, and just invoicing you for that. There is some things that need to be fixed about that model from like a pure employment perspective, and this is the things that we work on basically. And the idea is that even if you don't have that entity there, we can give them all the benefits and all the rights that they need locally. So think of it like that. Tomorrow you have one person in India as a contractor, then you want to make them an employee, and then you want to hire an Australian contractor or an employee in France. It doesn't matter. All of them live into Deel, have a similar and standardized experience, and have an experience that you really would struggle to give on your own, basically.
And how much do you do like kind of, I don't know, it would be like data calibration, coordination. Like let's say you mentioned Spain. We've never hired anybody in Spain, but let's say we want to hire somebody in Spain. How do you put together, like, what's the kind of benefits package that makes sense in Spain? What are the types of, I don't know if there's like retirement packages or government sponsored pensions or how, just how does that all work? Is that
so we walk through all of that with our customers, and that's a big part of the evangelization and the reason a lot of them want to hop on calls. In Europe, a lot of those are much more standardized than you think. A lot of those are actually statutory packages given by the government that you have when you pay your income taxes and your employer costs. So it's a lot less transactional than like maybe in the United States. And then on top of that, we do have like, global health insurance as a supplement if you wanted to give like VIP health insurance to different people, and something a lot more robust than like what usually people get in the country, which a lot of the American companies have a tendency to do because, they pay crazy health insurance for the US employees. So they feel like they need to do the same for non-US employees, although they might not have to. All of that is very straightforward. Like you would come in on Deel and you'd get a code that basically gives you all of that data for you to be able to make that judgment, and then you'd get local people out walking you through that if you are unsure or if you have deeper questions.
Cool. So it sounds like there's like a lot of local expertise and knowledge that can be shared from the Deel platform or kind of service back to people who want to hire in each market.
And that's definitely a big moat as well for us, right? To local understanding of the regulations and the different setups and the different types of workers and how to do it right sounds really hard. It is actually pretty hard, but it brings so much value for our end users. It brings so much value for ourselves, and just so much knowledge and expertise that's very hard to say like go after or copy.
Right. How do you think about things like? I think like everybody today, I think my understanding comes to Deel already with some sort of talent they've discovered somewhere in a relationship that they've built, and they want to use Deel as kind of a utility to help execute that relationship. But one could imagine, I don't know if it's like, in next month or it's like, 10 years out.
Not building a marketplace.
Something like that. Okay. Yeah, something like, a place where people who want to work in this style and who are kind of accustomed to this might be able to like find opportunities. Is that?
The way I look at it is I hate the idea of having like press 2-click, get on a remote job board, or press 2-click and like get another, like, you're coming here, you're trusting me with your teammate, with the people that you've looked for, the people you're working with, the people you trust with. And, we're here to make that relationship really great. We're here to make sure it lasts for a long time and to lower your attrition, to give them more benefits, to give them a better system for payments, for invoices, for employment. So, a lot of people always ask me that, like, are you going to build that into a marketplace? I actually feel very strongly against it. Never say never from like a product perspective. There's maybe a couple of tweaks we can make to help the people that don't have a job anymore eventually, but at a very pragmatic level, if I was my customer and my teammate could click 2 buttons and hop on like a job board or another thing, I would not like that.
Right. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't. I would agree that doesn't seem like a good way to do it, but I could imagine that if people are comfortable with the Deel brand, you could end up generating your own top of funnel kind of new talent into it. And I don't know if that kind of thing, maybe it's too much of its own focus to do it well. I certainly don't think you want to like push a button and switch from one customer to another customer. That's probably a bad experience for everybody.
Sourcing is honestly a different job that I don't know how to do, that I'm trying to figure out from my own team, to be honest. Again, never say never, but in terms of like our product roadmap and some of the things we're building right now for our customers, like there's so many things we want to build to just make the relationship better, empower the relationship, and streamlining workflows and making things more compliant. That I want to take care of your team before more than anything else.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. How do you think about things like physical infrastructure? So like I know some people actually are heavy in physical infrastructure, and this could be a piece of real estate or a WeWork, or it could be to get a MacBook delivered to a developer. Do you think at all about kind of the physical world and the atoms to empower people, or is that sort of too far afield?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of cool companies building there. Do we have demand for that? For sure. Again, it's like, not an area of focus for us today. Again, never say never. Not an area of focus for us. I think we've got a lot on our plate, just like opening 40+ entities in the quarter and things like that. So, but I think there's amazing companies in that space. So we'll see how they work out, and we'll see if I'm actually interested to see if this is a full-out blown $100 billion company or a good addition product to a platform like Deel or something like that.
Right. Yeah, maybe somebody proves the market and you extend it.
Somebody proves the market, I'll make them the first of.
Yeah. You don't want to take that risk when you've got enough great customer demand for your core product already. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, look, I know we're already past the time that we'd scheduled, but it's been a ton of fun for us to kind of catch up and hear about all your success and progress and kind of how you're thinking about stuff. So
thank you for having me. It was really fun. It was still pretty fuzzy after a pretty long day, so I hope I made sense on most of those.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Amazing.
Thanks, Ali. Okay. See you.